Welcome to the Tangle with Kyle Ridley. So happy to have you here on a double dose week of episodes. We spoke with Sarah Fraser a couple days ago and got great feedback on that episode, and she is an amazing woman. And we have an amazing man today who we're speaking with. His name is Goddard, and I came across his profile on Instagram probably 4 or 5 years ago. I think it was early in the pandemic, and honestly, it was probably a handsome face that showed up on my grid, and I was like, who is he about? And he's amazing. He has a new book out called Behind the Smile, Unmasking the Silent Battles We Hide and the Strengths We Find. We talk all about that book and his journey, and the book is broken down by the different masks that we wear. And the thing about masks is that we're always wearing them, and they're oftentimes for our own security, for our own benefit, and our safety. We don't have to be vulnerable and exposed at all times, but there does become a tipping point where masks become more of a hindrance than a security. And in thinking about what I was going to speak about today, I figured it's probably time to unmask a little bit of myself. This is a small podcast. It has a small and sweet and beautiful following. I have opened up a little bit in the past, but not a ton. And I am still going to take baby steps toward that because I don't need to grieve out everything on a public platform just yet. Perhaps I'll get there. There are some things that need to be kept sacred. But as I said, there are times when the masks we wear are just doing more harm than they could be doing good. And so let's take a little bit of that off. And as we break down the chapters in his book, I really find myself resonating with wearing the mask of isolation, the mask of independence, the mask of invulnerability. So I tend to isolate a lot when I am stressed or overwhelmed, and I think that's normal. There comes a point where you are hiding to an extreme extent, or you're isolating while with people and simply not opening up and not talking and giving the silent treatment or shutting down. Then you wear the mask of independence and feigning that you don't need any help. And I am a very independent person, but no one does everything alone, right? And you wear the mask of invulnerability because who wants to be vulnerable? That's always been a struggle for me. Even in partnerships and with family, it's very hard for me to open up. I can drive a conversation. I can lead a group of 10, 20 people and gather them, and we all have fun. And I wouldn't say interrogate, playfully interview everyone and get to know them. They often call me the producer of the group or the organizer, which I am happy to take on, and it's very natural for me. But as I question everyone and have fun and lead the way, I really can turn things around and push back if anything is geared toward me, a personal question, and I need to be better at that, letting the conversation sink into my own feelings instead of me asking everyone about theirs and me trying to give feedback or help, or wearing the mask of being a caretaker. That's also natural to me, especially with my dogs. And that's really where I feel most at home and where I like to rebuild my energy. I just feel like that's my calling almost, is to take care of these beautiful dogs and be on the couch with them. And I'm looking at one right now, and it's just my safe haven. And I need to be better at having those havens with others. And we do need help. We do need to be vulnerable. This year is a pile-on, it feels like. Just feel a little bit in limbo right now. There's high emotions all around, and there's just a lot bubbling under, and I'm trying to figure everything out so that it doesn't boil over into something messy or chaotic. And at the same time, I also feel secure in knowing everything will be okay and things will fall into place. I've been in similar situations and similar feelings and times in the past. And one thing about being 40 is the resilience builds, so does your experience, so do the lessons learned and everything that you're retaining from those lessons. So I can look on how I'm feeling and relate it to times I felt like this in the past and how maybe I flailed for a while and didn't deal with things better, and try to build on those missteps so that I can more successfully move through it this time. But it doesn't mean that it's still not a slog. Sometimes you feel a bit helpless and restless and just want to sink into the couch or shut everything off and hibernate. And I'm obviously speaking in general terms on purpose, probably. That's me not being vulnerable, not going into much detail. Meanwhile, I interview everyone and ask for details on their personal life and try to get into the underbelly of stuff. It's a strange time because I know there's so much good going on for me, but it's also paralleled with sadness and sickness and struggle, global, personal. The macro is the micro. And so who do I lean on? I will say that I have a beautiful partner. That is one thing that is so solid in my life, and getting better at opening up with them, to them, for them, because I know they're all open arms and want to hear and want to help. And I feel that way too. The steps are baby right now. They're baby steps as you open up yourself, your heart. I have great friends. I have group text with many people and friends that I've been in touch with since elementary school, middle school, high school, lifelong friends. The thing about them is most have families, most move away. It's very long distance and text based. So when you do get in touch, yes, I consider them a best friend and they consider me a best friend, but it's hard to open up when you don't see someone much or when you're so long distance. So maybe those deep conversations that we had when we were younger, it's harder to have as an adult when you aren't seeing each other every day and there's so much going on with each other's lives. It's like, when I see my friends, that's almost to me my reprieve from reality. I like to be with friends to let loose and laugh and have a drink. And I think I'm good at leading that with my friend group. You can count on me for a good time, dancing and laughing and making jokes and, possibly crude jokes. I am not afraid to lean into the cringe and the awkwardness. That's sort of my favorite type of humor. But the thing about all my friends, I think they know that about me at this point, and they choose to hang out with me. But none of us are super vulnerable, especially in group settings. You're not just sitting around talking about your deep, dark feelings or your conflicted feelings or anger, frustration, and sadness. So I can have dozens of friends and not feel very emotionally close or vulnerable with most of them. And I think that's normal. I think they would say the same about me. I was talking recently with someone who's going to be on this podcast soon about having an inner circle. And it's true. You can have this huge community, this huge group of people that you love to be with and that you're always in contact with. But the inner circle, I can count them all on one hand. So who are you really investing in being vulnerable with? That's really going to be there for the long run. I think that's probably also an issue with me. I don't open up terribly to many people because I guess part of me doesn't think that most people will be there in the long term, which again, I'm not finding that to be a sad thing or a burden. I do believe in the friendships are here for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. Reality is most aren't lifetime. I think I have a good gut when it comes to friends on who will be. It's not most. So you value and have fun and take care of each other while you are in touch. Life is long in that way. New people come and go. And I know I am not for everyone. I can be a lot. I'm sure by some people's standards, I can be, depending on my mood, loud or too much, too vocal, no filter. But I also know the too much people think I can be also helps a lot of people and provides a lot of joy for people and helps break the ice and also helps people come together and connect. So it took a few decades to not silence those parts of me, but there's no quieting me now. And I'm always open to feedback. I've had experiences where I know I rub someone wrong and I am quick to try and nip that in the bud and speak with someone one-on-one and happy to apologize if I did something wrong because that's never my intent. Pure intentions go a long way. A good heart goes a long way. I think true friends see that. But I also don't have time, space, or energy for people who aren't also willing to put in the work. So I've learned to, and I'm still learning to, lovingly close those doors when energy and investment isn't reciprocated. And it can sting for sure in the moment. But as I said, it's usually the people that are not in your inner circle that you have those experiences with. Over the weekend, I saw a lot of my family. There was a memorial service for my grandfather on my mom's side, my mom's father, who passed away over the summer, and the funeral was in Colorado, and His burial was here in the DC area at a very nice cemetery near Georgetown. And he was a high military officer, and it was a beautiful ceremony, and people flew in from all over. And you see your family who you've known for 40 years, and it's just a little eye opening because your cousins who you grew up with have babies now, and there's a new generation on the way. And then you see other family members who are aging, who are sick. Some family who is no longer there anymore. I have some close family members that are dealing with devastating health issues right now and getting treatment and having to face an unthinkable prognosis. One of my dogs is sick right now. I have to take him for a cancer surgery consult next week. And over the weekend, I went away with some friends to the beach, my happy place. I go several times a year, and it's supposed to be this end of summer reprieve and let loose and have fun. And it was fun for the most part, but there was still a bit of a cloud hanging overhead. And also, you learn a lot when traveling with friends. One thing I learned on this trip is that myself and my partner are not Airbnb people. Sorry. We like a hotel. So we went for a couple nights. We had some beautiful beach weather and had some good food and good drinks. And we established earlier on that if we had our fill, we would leave early. And there was other family things that we could be attending. And so we left a little bit early, and now we're back in the grind. And so how can I slowly start removing those masks? Perhaps I start with this. Maybe this show evolves a bit and we have tangles with some deeper content, maybe not just with celebrities, and maybe I have more solo rambles and invite people on to get deep. Maybe that's a way. Maybe that's one way of unmasking. But in any case, I definitely encourage everyone to read this book, Behind the Smile by Rob Goddard. It'll help you look inward and recognize all the masks that you're wearing and which ones benefit you and which ones are possibly harming or holding you back. Do I need to talk about anything else I'm tangled in? Probably not, but of course there's some good news. Hey, Taylor Swift got engaged. Love that. Any movies and shows? You know what? No. Let's get to this wonderful conversation. Again, his name is Rob Goddard. He is a men's coach, wellness coach, life coach, and you can make sure to follow him on Instagram. He's a great follow, always posting inspirational content, and of course, check out his book, Behind the Smile. Here we go, everyone. Rob Goddard. Of course, we're going to talk all about this book, Behind the Smile, but I want to get more of your backstory because there's a lot that leads to someone being able to write a book. So you're living in Australia now, grew up in Canada?
Yes, I grew up in northern Canada in a little town called Smithers, BC. Population about like 6,000 to 7,000. I think when you grow up in a small town, you don't appreciate it as much, but when you leave and you come back, you're like, wow, it's such a beautiful place. So every time I go back, when you drive into the town, we've got this giant mountain, ski mountain that we have, which is Hudson Bay Mountain. Going back as an adult, like it's so much bigger than I remember. It's just a really beautiful outdoorsy town with a lot to offer as far as activities and it is a bit of a holiday destination. There's a few celebrities that usually go to our mountain and have a lodge and all that stuff there. So yeah, beautiful little town. Growing up as a kid, have all the outdoorsy things. We didn't have technology back then, which was great. And um so grateful that I got to grow up in that environment.
Yeah, I've loved every Canadian that I come across. And I think right now it's sort of like a dream place for a lot of people, especially in America. It's like, oh, we should just go north. And plus, I have like all my tattoos are Alanis Morissette, so
Okay.
another lovely Canadian.
It's calling you. It's calling you.
I know. So you mentioned not having technology. At your mid 30s, I'm a little older than you, right? So you're
Yeah,
a
35.
90s kid?
Yeah.
Okay, so not a 90s kid. When you were young, you described yourself as the helper, the strong one, the caretaker. Did you assume that role in single digits right away? How did that fall upon you?
So the way this, I know we're going to talk about it, but the way the book's laid out is all about the mask and when those masks kind of formed. And so the rescuer, the helper, that person kind of started developing around when I first came face to face with my mother's alcoholism. And that was around, God, 15, 16, I think. You kind of suddenly you go from being the child to being the adult in that relationship, all right? Because it's like, oh, suddenly my mom's incapable of doing these things because of her illness, and so I need to step into that role. And it's no role that any kid should have to be forced into, unfortunately. But yeah, even my sister, my older sister, she took that role on much younger than I did, trying to protect me from things that were going on in my parents' relationship and our upbringing. But growing up as a little boy, adapting and trying to blend in, and growing up in a small town when you're feeling a little bit different, you're trying to, you have the girlfriends, right? You're trying to play that part, and you say the homophobic slurs, trying to hide your identity, but you're trying to balance all these things. My mother's drinking, high school peer pressure, girlfriends, my relationship with my dad, and then the whole I'm trying to figure out if I'm gay. What does that all mean? And then there's doing the drugs. So there are so many things you're trying to balance as a kid going through high school, and it was an eventful upbringing. I'll say that.
You mentioned 15 is when you're confronted with her alcoholism. So is
Yeah.
it something that she's just hiding throughout your whole childhood? Because 15 is pretty formative to be able to understand my mom is sick and has an alcohol problem. Was your sister, she knew about it earlier and she was shielding you from it?
Yeah, my whole family kind of shielded from me. She went through her own trauma. She lost two babies prior to my sister and I, premature births. And so there was that trauma. She was sexually abused by her grandpa. There's some relationship with my dad, some stuff there that she went through, but she never dealt with it. And I think that's where the started drinking started to form. But then her mother died. There was stories where my sister would tell me they're putting my mom in hospital or taking my mom to rehab, right? And I was too young. So when I was finally confronted with it, I'd come upstairs in the morning from waking up, and my mom's best friend, Nicole, was there. And she's like, told me that she had called the hospital or the ambulance, and the ambulance were on their way. My mom had fallen and hit her head. Right. And I didn't know what was going on. I'm like, okay. And so my mom's sitting there and she was kind of out of it. And she's like, I'm fine. I'm fine. And, she's got an ice pack on her head. And the ambulance came and the paramedics were like, we're going to take you in the hospital. And my mom's like, no, I don't need to go. And, they convinced her to go. And then they asked me to go with her. And so here I am, not knowing what's going on. And suddenly I'm in this ambulance with my mom, who's kind of out of it, a bit drunk, holding her head. And I was just trying to process everything, and then we're in the hospital, and my mom's wanting to leave, and I was like, "No, mom, you have to stay." Right? At 15, you're trying to understand all these things, and then I remember texting my stepmom, and the story always gets me because it was like that shift for me from going to from child to adult. But I texted my stepmom to come get me, and so she came, and I remember walking out of the hospital, and I was still processing, but I remember walking towards her and I just completely collapsed. I just broke down. I started crying. I was like, didn't know what was going on. And she was furious, right? She doesn't remember this, but she walked in and she just tore a strip off my mom, right? She was like, how dare you do this to your son? And so that was the day where I was like, it all changed for me. And that was when I became aware of what was going on and the struggles. And I think the only memory I have prior to that incident was a Christmas when my mom had a few drinks in her, and I could feel she was just acting a little bit silly. And that's my only other memory that I have prior to that event.
So that's your first mask you wore. It almost falls into several of the masks that you list in your book. So you're trying to act normal. You have the mask of normalcy. You're not vulnerable. You're trying to stay in control. You're adapting. You're conforming. You're probably isolating at that time too. So what would you call the first mask that you wore?
Yeah, so the way the book is laid out is following my timeline. I start off with the mask of tradition, where we are born into a tradition, whether that be cultural, societal, family, could be religion. That's the mask of tradition. It's like we don't have a choice. This is how we do things here. And then as I grow up, going through my parents' separation, the divorce, having new relationships coming and going with my parents. So that's where the mask of adaptation is formed. Learning to adapt to different surroundings, different environments, different people coming and going, different personality types, new siblings. All right. So then I go into conformity, which goes into school years where you're trying to blend in. All right. And so for me, it was like I felt like I was gay. So it was like, I'm going to get the girlfriend. or I'm going to do drugs. I'm going to try and blend in and fit the parts. But then the bullying starts, which so many of us have gone through. And that's where the mask of isolation goes into. I would spend lunch hours in the library eating my lunch by myself because of the bullying. I think I was 13 and I ended up hooking up with this guy who was from another town and the word got out. And so I'd get bullied in the um in the hallways. And it wasn't like physical. It was never physical abuse. It was just verbal abuse. Right. Or, Rob and FJ, blah, 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 blah.
So
So
you knew from a young age that you were gay or interested in boys.
yeah, absolutely. It was playing around with the thought. And then have you ever watched Red Shoe Diaries, that old series?
Mm-mm.
No? So it was like a romantic, soft porn, sexy series that would go on. And it was all about this. I can't remember his name, Jake. He'd read these journals from someone else. And it was just all these, so it'd be these really soft sex scenes. But Jake was really sexy, I found. And I would sneak down after everyone went to bed about 9:30 p.m. I would sneak down in my living room and I would watch these series. And then the internet came out, and that's where the more exploration starts happening, right? I think we all kind of start exploring and experimenting and doing all those things from an early age. So yeah, it was once the internet came out, it was like, you know,
Oh, I remember those chat
yeah.
rooms. Yeah.
So,
No, I
so
mean, it's the same with me. I was like 15 when it was like the internet was booming and just those AOL chat rooms and
yeah,
Yahoo Messenger. And yeah, that's how I connected for the first time with someone as well.
yeah.
And so you wear that mask. When did you take off that mask? When did you come out
When
to
did I come out?
family?
It was a slow process. It was, we have, certain people, it's a slow, gradual thing. Some people just come out. And I think I came out to two of my girlfriends, Nadine and Jen were the first two. And then I think I told my stepmom, and they're all like, "Yeah, we know. Like that's fine. Like everyone knows, right?" And you're like, "What? How did you know?" And you're like, "I thought I was hiding it so well."
Did your mom know?
I think so. So my mom and dad were later on. I think I came out to a few friends, and then I remember vividly walking into high school. This was before graduation, and I remember walking down the hallways one morning, and it was almost like everyone was standing there, like clapping for me, like "Congratulations!" It was like one of those, "You did it! Congratulations!" So the bullying stopped, but everyone was like really proud of me. It was like kind of that experience for me. And then when I moved to Vancouver, and I met my first partner, Wayne, and he was 20 years older than me, right? And
We're so much alike, Rob. Mine
uh,
was 20 years older than me too
oh, amazing,
when I was a
amazing.
teenager. Yeah.
Yeah, I was 18. No, I lied. I actually lied. I lied about my age to him. I said I was 20 or something. And so I was having all these problems with my dad. My dad and my relationship growing up wasn't great. And I was really struggling with it. And my partner was like, listen, if we're going to move forward, we need to deal with this. And so I spent a week writing a coming out letter, which is in the book, the actual letter. It was really hard letter because there was a lot of anger, a lot of sadness. And the interesting thing about reading that letter now, my 18-year-old self, I was like blaming him for all these things, but at the same time at the same time I was trying to win his approval. I'm like, but I'm doing really good and this is my partner, but you did this and you did this, but I'm painting and I'm like, so it's like these two sides of continuously trying to win his approval and like look how great I'm doing though. Like love me, right? I wrote that letter, I sent it to him, and I didn't talk to him for about a year and a half after that. He didn't take it very well. My sisters described it as he looked like someone had died in the family. I think he knew. He just was trying to process it. Like when we go back to the internet and all the porn that I was looking up, I didn't know how to delete the browser history back then. So my dad found all my search engines and brought me into a room one day with my stepbrother because we looked at it together because it was like, come do this with me because I don't want to be alone when I'm looking and
Mhm.
exploring, right? Yeah, we sat in a room and he was like, what's all this? And it was the first time I confronted my dad. I yelled at him and I was like, what are you going to do? What are you going to do if I was gay? Huh? You're going to kick me out? And he's like, yeah, maybe. And I remember storming out of the room, crying, blah, blah, blah. And it was just another wedge in our relationship. So I wrote this letter to him. I came out. We didn't talk for about a year and a half. My whole family was harping on him. Like, what the hell's wrong with you? This is your son. And I wrote a letter to my mom as well, but I don't have that letter. I couldn't find it. And she she accepted me, but she was very honest. She's like, I'm processing this. I just need to process this. She wasn't religious or anything. My younger sisters were homeschooled and heavily involved in the church. And so because of that influence, they're like, you're still our brother, but we can't accept that you're gay. And so there was that little hurdle. But, they're out of the church now, and they're massive supporters in my life and everything now. So yeah, coming out was a gradual thing. My grandparents were massively supportive. Everyone else in my family was massively supportive. And I think when your first partner is 20 years older than you, your parents and everyone's going to have questions, right? They're going to be like,
Mhm.
who is this guy? What is this guy doing with
Yes.
our son? So,
Yes.
yeah.
And would you say that your relationship with your parents at that point was already a bit fractured, especially with your mom and alcoholism from 15 to 18? Is she getting better through these years?
She was in and out of rehab. She would come to Vancouver, and my partner Wayne at the time was so supportive and helpful with me and that process. She would come and we'd pick her up at the airport. We would take her to a rehab facility. She would be let out on the weekend, so she would stay with us. It was constant relapse, and her weight and her figure constantly flex like up and down. Like she'd be really bloated, and then she'd lose the weight, and it'd be all over the place. So it was never like just smooth sailing. And then the relationship with my dad was a slow process. And I think it was after his dad died and his best friend died is when there was this massive shift in him, and he became a lot softer. But we're still getting there. We're still trying to figure all that stuff out. But the relationship with my mom, I'm a mama's boy, like, through and through. And so there were times where I had to cut my mom off because it was becoming too hard, and you have to. And I'm like, I need to focus on my own life because you're taking a lot of my energy, unfortunately. But it didn't last long because I love my mom.
And you dedicate the book to your mom as well as your
Mm.
younger self.
Yep.
So let's talk a bit more about that, because you found out she's an alcoholic at 15. You're 35 now. That's 20 years. And your mom is no longer with us. I know you went and visited her during her end of life. Talk about the journey of healing and then coming together and still having to be the caretaker.
Yeah. So it's harder when you live so far away. I'm in Australia, she's back in Canada. So being able to help her and support her the way I would have loved to wasn't quite as available. And and whenever we jumped on a phone call, she would kind of paint that picture. Things are great. Life is great. I'm cleaning, I'm baking, right? I'm going for walks, right? She was so good at painting this picture. But then when I'd go home, the house was a mess. She'd be in bed drunk. And going home was always stressful for her. Whenever my sister or I would go home, it would stress her out, not because she didn't want to see us, but I think, it was just a lot. And her boyfriend was never around. And that was another thing that I really hated was, he was supposed to be there and looking after my mom. And where's he? He's at a friend's drinking and she's at home drunk in bed. Right. But going home was always an obstacle. You never really knew what you're going to be walking into. Like, we don't know how she survived so long. Nurses and doctors don't know how she lasted so long. She would injure herself. She'd fall. She'd break her ankles. One of the hardest times I came home was finding her sleeping but she'd broken her ankle and had surgery and had screws put in her leg. So she had a porta potty in her bedroom. And because she was getting so drunk, she wouldn't even get out of bed. And so when I came home and I found her sleeping in her own filth, it was one of the hardest, like the worst things you can find your parent in, right? Especially you see this woman who's just such a beautiful soul, and seeing how much this illness has taken advantage of her, and just seeing her in this state was really hard. And you just step into fix mode, right? How can I support her right now? Like, what can I do? Going to end of life, June 2021. Just after I got my permanent residency and I was about to move up to Queensland, we got a phone call that my mom ended up in hospital and she was having a lot of abnormal breathing. When they took her in, they had to flush 6 liters of water out of her fluid out of her, because of all the fluid retention that built up, and she had severe liver cirrhosis. And so we made a decision that I would put my stuff in storage and I'd fly home because it could be the last time I see her. And so I went back to Canada middle of COVID. During that time, traveling was really difficult. Like, you had to apply and had to get doctor's notes and, urgency and all these things. So I had to jump up through all these hoops. And luckily I got approved on the first round compared to a lot of people. So I was very grateful for that. But I spent 2 weeks in quarantine with her, and she couldn't even walk on her own. She was just frail. She had a giant scar on her head from a time that she had fallen. Because she spent so much time in bed drinking, it was just her arms were so thin, her legs were thin. And so the first week I spent cleaning. I went into control mode, right? I need to control this environment. I need to make sure everything's working. And it was I doing it for her or was I doing it for myself?
You talk about that in your book. You have a whole chapter on the mask of control and
Yeah.
how you're controlling things to make yourself and others feel secure, probably more others. So you're constantly wearing these masks and she passes away. Do you feel like when she passes away, there's any masks that are removed?
I think it was the mask of invulnerability. When my mom passed, I kept telling people I was okay and that I was fine. It was hard, but it was okay because she had this illness and she's not suffering anymore. I remember having this conversation with myself. I was like, why am I telling everyone I'm fine? Like my mom just died. Like, what am I trying to prove here? I'm allowed to be sad. I'm allowed to, say that I'm not doing great. And so from that day forward, I would just tell people the honest truth. And they'd like, how you doing? I'm like, I'm shit. Life sucks right now. Like it just, you just lost your mom. I think it was compiling because I think every time we say fine, it just piles on, right? It's like this weight we throw on our shoulders because we're not dealing with anything. We're not dealing with the emotion. We're not dealing with the anger, the sadness, whatever it is that we're trying to avoid. And so it builds up until it cracks. And that was happening with me. I was like, oh God, it's so heavy. Just trying to perform and trying to be okay all the time, trying to be the strong one all the time. And so the mask of invulnerability was a big one for me. And when I was just honest. I was like, life sucks. I think when you lose a parent, for anyone that's lost a mom, you lose a part of yourself. All right. There's a chunk of you that disappears.
And the thing is, with these masks, we're constantly wearing them throughout our lives, putting them on and removing them. It's not a bad thing to wear a
No.
mask. And a lot of times these masks are protecting us.
Yes.
So you obviously built skills over the years to be able to recognize when you're wearing a mask and to remove it. And you say that it started when you stopped pretending and you started getting help. So what did getting help look like for you?
Getting help was doing the work, being honest with myself, getting my own coaching techniques. Like when we're trying to avoid these things, and I'm going to use my dad's relationship as an example. Is I cut him out of my life. There was a lot of anger and sadness built up around him. I couldn't have him in my life, and so like put them aside. But the thing when you don't deal with things, they always have a way of coming back and resurfacing. And it started doing that for me and being like, hey, I'm here when you're ready to deal with me. Let's start doing the work. I had to deal with that anger that I had around my dad and my family. I had to deal with the sadness that I was dealing, but there was other stuff, guilt, shame, fear, all of these emotions that I hadn't dealt with that I suppressed. And so getting the help was being okay with asking for help and saying, this is really hard to do on my own. I need some guidance because I can't figure it out. And I'm tired of sitting in this space of the unknown and these emotions that aren't serving me or helping me forward. But by not dealing with them, those emotions started playing out into all these other aspects of my life, my relationships, my work, just my own health, going to the gym. I wasn't motivated, all these things that it was impacting. When it started doing that, you need to recognize that there's another option that's available for you. And sometimes it's okay if we can't figure it out on our own. So that was me getting my help.
You get your help, your mom passes away, and you start jotting down your thoughts, correct? Like you journaling and releasing your thoughts. You just needed to like clear the clutter. And when you start breaking down the masks, there's what 15 masks in the
Mm.
book. I'm sure there could be dozens and dozens. How did you formulate what you were really going to focus on? Did it come with like a big list and you had to narrow it down?
Yeah, so this book started, God, probably 5 months before my mom passed. And when I was back in Canada for that 10-month period, there was so much I was dealing with. And I was like, I just need to get this out of my head. And so I went to the cafe about 5:30 in the morning with my laptop. I'm like, I'm just going to start writing. And I'm just going to start talking about these major events. And I've always wanted to write a book. And so I'm like, I'm going to write a book and I'm just going to talk about all these major events and how I've grown, the lessons I've learned, and, how they've shaped me into the person I am today. And so I'm talking about all the things that I've held behind my smile, of how I've portrayed myself on social media. My first chapter was the masks we wear. I came out with why do we hide? What are we hiding behind our smile? So we're wearing different masks. All right. So we're scared. What are we fearing? We're fearing judgment. We're fearing criticism, all these different things. And so that's where some of the masks started forming: the mask of control, the mask of invulnerability, the mask of defense. And so when I sent my manuscript to my editor, she's like, love this. This is great. Want to do so many things, but let's make it all about the masks. She's like, go give me 6 more masks. And so then I started going through each of the events and kind of stories that I was sharing in my manuscript. I'm like, all right, what mask kind of works with this storyline and what would be formed here and what was I going through. So when I talk about relationships, I wasn't perfect. I wouldn't let anyone help me, right? I had to do it on my own. I had to get the visa on my own. And so one of my ex-partners was like, no, let's do the de facto. I'll help you. I'm like, no, I don't want that. I want to do this on my own. I don't want your help. So the mask of independence comes into play. When my mom's alcoholism, when that whole event happened, the mask of the rescuer was formed. When we're thrown into a situation where we have to step into adulthood and the caregiver. But then when I was back in Canada with my mom, I was trying to control these things. And that's where I talk about the mask of control.
When you wear all these masks, as we talked about, some of them serve you well and can really benefit you. Can you distinguish when a mask is benefiting you and when you should recognize the turning point that it's doing more harm than good and it's time to try to remove it?
So let's do the mask of rescuer, for instance. So helping people and constantly trying to rescue or help people out. But when you are doing it to an extent of not prioritizing yourself and when there's an imbalance, right? When all you're focusing on is putting your energy into other people and helping others rather than yourself, that's when the imbalance comes into play. That's when it's starting to become unhealthy, right? So, or there's the mask of cynicism, right? When we've been burned a few times and we've created this persona, like, it's like, oh, I've been on 5 bad dates. And so I've taken that, I've made it about me. And every time I go on a gay date or whatever, any date, all guys do this. Or every time I go into a coffee shop, the baristas they're rude to me. So we've created this persona because we've been burned a couple times into the mask of sin, and we've just got a bad view on these certain things. So it's understanding that maybe those people, those situations, it wasn't about us, it was about them. So like you said before, yes, the masks do serve a purpose. And I think a lot of people are like, oh, so now what's life like now that you don't wear masks? I'm like, no, it's not about not wearing the masks anymore. It's the awareness. When is the mask becoming unhealthy for you? When is it impacting your health, your relationships, your work life? Mask of control, right? In the workspace.
I guess if you're never removing it or if you're leading with that, if,
Yes.
some people know you as a fun, like, oh, he's fun and cynical, but he's good-hearted. But if you're leading with, oh, he's just so negative and cynical, that's when there's the turning
Mm,
point. So with the book, you're obviously identifying and defining and breaking down all these masks and sharing your own personal stories with each, but you're also sharing steps to help people remove them.
mm.
So can we go through the process of how you outlined, because it's a lot of steps, a lot, 15, 16 chapters, and then breaking down how to get started. If you want to highlight maybe a starting point or a certain mask that you think would be helpful for people to start with.
Yeah, so the way I've designed it is through the chapter, I share where the masks may have been formed. So step one would be understanding, A, what is the mask you're wearing? All right, so that's where I share my real life examples, my personal story. I share my client stories so people have something to resonate with. But I share where these masks may have resonated from, why we wear them, the pros and the cons, and then I go into steps for removing them. So it's a understanding what's the mask you're wearing, where it may have formed, and then, what is it costing you? So understanding that. And I think that's when reaching out for help is having those conversations or putting yourself in situations. So let's use the mask of invulnerability. A little simple example, if someone's really scared of being vulnerable, it's like, let's put ourselves in a situation or if you have one person that you feel safe enough with, share one thing that you've been scared to talk about. Right. And so taking those baby steps of practicing and exercising that muscle of being honest and open and being a little vulnerable with one person, or putting yourself in a group setting where everyone is sharing and it's a safe space where you can just share openly and not feel judged or shamed.
I relate because I think a big part is also being able to speak about the masks, like sharing your feelings. Specifically with me, the mask of isolation. So
Mhm.
being able to share with my loved ones, I need a night to isolate. I don't want to talk. I'm going to turn my phone off, or like I need a weekend where I don't plan anything, because that's how I need to be refueled.
Yeah.
Is I need to be
Yeah.
alone. With too much social, I'll get weighted
Yeah.
down. Or telling people like I'm feeling really a lack of control. It would really help if I can control this aspect of this. or even just sharing, I'm really uncomfortable not being in control of this, that can also relieve some of the tension. Like,
Mm,
okay, now everyone knows. Yeah, it's identifying it and actually speaking it
yeah.
aloud too.
Where does it come from? Why do I act this way? Right. And start asking questions. With this book, because I behave certain ways, I wanted to know why. Why was I acting this way in these relationships? Right? Why did I sabotage this relationship? Because I was so scared of letting someone help me. Okay. And then I'm like, all right, where would that have come from? So my parents, my upbringing, right? And so the beautiful thing about this book is like watching a movie. So when you get later in the book, when you look back into my storyline, you're like, that mask makes sense because of the story he shared. That's probably where it came from, and that's where it was formed. And yes, the masks go on and off, and it's like you said with isolation, right? Healthy is I need to recharge. I'm gonna isolate myself for a while. Unhealthy is I'm not going out anymore. Every weekend I stay in, people try and contact me. I'm gonna stay by myself. Right? When you're doing it too long.
Talk about the Mask of the Seducer. That's one that sticks out.
Yeah. That was a interesting chapter to write when I was doing my research around it. It was confronting for me, and it was a bit of a smack in the face because it really opened my eyes to understanding I was a flirt, I was a tease, I was like, blah, 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 like, come on in, boys, like, look at me, right? But then as soon as it got too serious, I'd be like, no, 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 not too close, all right? I'm in control of where this goes. And so in the end, it was people getting upset. It was damaging relationships. It was the lure, the seduction, the flirtation, right? But as soon as it started to get too serious or too vulnerable, that was when I would pull away. And I really recognized that in myself that I had been doing over the years. And I was like, yeah, I've hurt some people. People got upset with me, and this makes sense. And I think we all do it. It's like the online world is this big flirtatious and the seducing way. But then as soon as guys want to get a little closer, they're like, nah, I'm good. All right. But it's all talk.
True. You've been seducing all of them.
But even with
No, I will.
yeah, even with sex, right?
Well, you're well known too on online, and I have seen fake profiles pop up a
Uh,
lot with your face. So that in itself is seducing. Like, oh, people want to be me.
yeah. Even when we're going out and we want that quick fix of connection, of being with someone, but anything more than that is too much to handle because it could be a potential reason for a past relationship. You've been burned in the past, right? Or you've had a bad experience. And so letting someone in too close, but you're still craving that connection. So as long as I can get that little sense of connection with someone and a little rush, that's enough for me. But God forbid I go any deeper because I don't want to be hurt again.
In our last few minutes, let's talk a little about relationships and dating. Was that one with Wayne a long-term one, I assume?
Wayne was, yeah, that was my 4 year relationship. That was the first, 4 years.
Well, now 35. Are you back on the apps? Are you in a relationship?
I've been single for 5 years now, almost 5 years.
COVID, start of
I
COVID.
know. I came out of my last relationship, which I went through the whole visa process with. And then the mom stuff happened, the COVID stuff happened. Mom died, and I took a year off for healing. Like this year is all about me and healing and regrouping myself. And I was like, all right, this next year is all about business and getting my feet back under me and blah, blah, blah. It wasn't until I wrote the Mask of Seducer chapter that I had this like, this is what I've been doing. Maybe I should just start letting people in a little bit more and being open to something else rather than this seducing game that I've been playing. And so, yeah, I'm out dating again. I'm not on the apps this year. I've done the apps. I've had some bad experiences on the apps. I think we all have a bad experience on the apps. But I also found it was a really big distraction for me because I was really trying to build my business. And we can dive into those a lot and use that as a distraction to use on. And, 3 hours goes by. And it's almost like the seducer thing. Again, it's all chat. But then when it comes to stepping over the line for a lot of people, they're like, no, I'm good. So yeah, I've done scruff in the past. Grindr was never my jam. But yeah, dating's back on the cards. I'm dating. I'm a little more open. I know what I'm looking for.
Everyone in Australia, look up the
Yeah.
apps.
But yeah, I think it's when people ask, why are you single? How are you single? All that stuff. I think when you do a lot of the work on yourself, I'm not willing just to settle for anyone. Like, I'm not just going to date for the sake of dating, jumping in a relationship just to be in a relationship. I know what I'm looking for. And I see friends go relationship to relationship, relationship, and they post that they're in a relationship. 3 months later, they're out of the relationship. 2 months after that, they're in a new relationship posting on social media, right? And if that works for them, that's fine. That's not me. I know what I'm looking for, and I know the energy that I put into a relationship. So yeah, I'm not rushing. Let's put it that way.
There's no
No.
rush. You're still young and have fun no matter what.
Yeah,
You have your cat by your
absolutely.
side. All right. Well, the theme of the show, the tangle, I want to know what you're currently tangled in that you're loving. Could be a show or book or anything you're immersing yourself into. And then something a little frustrating that you're currently tangled in that you're working to get untangled from.
So currently tangled in is training program I'm doing right now. It's an 8-week program, which I'm loving. It's, gives you all these recipes and stuff. So
Training program as in health and fitness? Because,
yeah, health and fitness.
okay, you're a fitness coach, but you're also a life
So
coach.
fitness coach was back in the day. I used to be a personal trainer. I enjoyed it. It kind of became more of a therapy session with a lot of my clients, unfortunately. And I was like, I created this amazing program for you, but you want to talk instead, and you can't do both. Yeah, so now I'm a men's transition coach for men who are going through any kind of life transition.
Website, can you
Yeah,
repeat
so
it?
liftingstones.com.au.
You're helping men through divorce, their own relationship, helping them remove their own masks, and you're currently working on an 8-week program?
Yeah, so I'm taking part in an 8-week program for my own health and fitness.
Oh, okay.
Yep. So it's a program.
Oh, your own.
Yeah, my
Okay.
own health and
Okay. Yeah, good,
fitness.
good.
So that's something I'm loving, and they're giving me recipes and all that stuff. I am also building a 6-week program that's going to complement the book. That's going to be a one-on-one thing, and I'm also building a self-run program in relation to the book as well, so people can just go online and take their time going through this program. And then what am I tangled in that I'm not enjoying? Was that a question?
Yeah, or anything that's annoying that you're just frustrating. It doesn't have to be too serious, but anything that's, yeah, complicated right now.
Have you ever run a business? It's so when you have to wear all the hats.
I started one this
I
year.
know.
Yeah, it's a
There's a lot
lot.
of hats you have to wear. It's I think self-diagnosed ADHD, but it's organization and structure.
You have help? 'Cause you do a lot on social media. Do you have a social media person
No,
or?
I do it all. I create my content almost daily. I love creating content. I absolutely love it. I'm a creative person. I think my next little hobby or thing I'm going to get into is going to be painting. That's been niggling at the back of my head, so I'm going to get into some painting and abstract work. And so I love creating my content. And when it comes to control, right, having someone else do my content for me, I'm like, oh, we'll have to talk about that.
Yeah.
It's personal. It's based off things I've gone through, conversations I've had. It's not like I just pull it from thin air and like, I'm just gonna throw this out for the sake of it. It's happened. It comes to me and it goes out. But yeah, it's a lot of work running a business, and it can feel overwhelmed. Like email marketing and campaigning and doing all those things. And yeah, it's the techie stuff is a lot of work. I love coaching. I love creating the content.
Yeah, do you even have a publicist
No,
or manager?
no,
Rob. I mean, neither do I, but you have a lot of followers. You're killing it. That's pretty cool.
thank you.
And are you still writing on the side for pleasure?
Yes, I am working on my next book. I've kind of been talking about it a little bit, the topic of the gray zone. So that's kind of going to be my next book in the future. So yeah, it's hard to stop at one book. You go through the process and you enjoy it. And I've got a million ideas for different books and titles and all that stuff. And I think every time you have a conversation with a client or somebody in the general public and you hear about one of their problems, you're like, oh, I should write a book. And the name of that book would be this, right? So you come up with these ideas. I would love to get it out within the next year. So yeah, there's always things to do.
It's all good stuff. And as we close, in addition to your mom, you dedicate the book to your younger self. So if you can encapsulate your relationship to your younger self right now, how you feel looking back at that 15-year-old or 5-year-old, is there something you would say to that person, especially wearing all those masks at such a young age?
I think I would say like I'm proud of you. Like you never gave up. You stayed on top of it. You went through your journey, but you never let it consume you. And you constantly challenged yourself. You're always open to opportunities. You try, like, I'm a very open-minded person. I'll try most things once. And I think that was the adventurous side of my younger self. I look back at that and grateful for some of the things I went through because it helped build the character and allowed me to kind of develop those masks. And each of those masks comes with strengths. And so it's been able to take those and like, oh, I'm a very adaptable person. And I look at that as a strength. So grateful for growing up as much as it was like tough in the beginning of constantly having to shift around homes and having all these adults coming in and out of my life as a child. Like it was confusing, but into adulthood, it's given me this massive strength. So proud of the little boy of Rob, 15-year-old, for not giving up on life and not letting the external circumstances consume me.
Beautifully said. Rob, thank you so much. This was
Thank you,
great.
Kyle.
I've been following you probably early in the pandemic is when I came across your profile, and I know you've been through a lot. Now to know that you're writing more, it'll be fun in 10, 20 years what you're going to think of your first book and this era of yours.
Thank you so much for having me.
Check out that book, Behind the Smile. Give Rob Goddard a follow on Instagram. He's always posting a lot. We'll be back next week for another double dose of episodes. We have 2 more men on the show. Hey, all the boys come to the yard. We have comedian Chris Frangiola, who you may know from his days on Chelsea Lately, and he also co-hosts the Juicy Scoop podcast often with Heather McDonald, and he has his own podcast, Cover to Cover. So we're talking to him as he heads out on the road for his tour. And then on Thursday, we are speaking with Emmy nominee and author of my favorite book of the year, Actress of a Certain Age, Jeff Hiller. Can't wait for all of that. I will see you again next week. Thank you all for listening, and I will check in with you soon. Take care of yourselves.